There comes a moment in your inner evolution when something quiet but irreversible begins to shift. Your consciousness starts to wake up. You notice you are no longer completely lost in the stream of thoughts running through your mind. Instead of being pulled into every worry, every memory, every fear, you begin sensing a space behind them. A space that watches, a space that notices, a space that observes without getting tangled. If you are feeling this shift, this video is for you. Before we go deeper, take a breath, stay with me, and if you are on this path of awakening, gently like this video, and subscribe so more of these reminders can find you exactly when you need them. This moment of recognition is not dramatic. There are no fireworks, no sudden revelation, just a subtle, undeniable knowing. You are not the thoughts, you are the one aware of the thoughts, and this simple recognition changes the entire direction of your life. This is the moment you enter the observer state. The observer is the part of you that thoughts cannot touch. It is the awareness that exists before your mind starts talking. It is the silent presence that has been with you in every moment of your existence, even when you were completely lost in mental noise. When you begin shifting into this observing consciousness, everything quietly begins to rearrange. You stop believing every thought that appears. You stop drowning in every emotional wave. You stop treating your inner commentary as if it were absolute truth. Instead, you watch it all rise and fall like clouds passing through an open sky. This is the beginning of true awakening. Your consciousness awakens when you enter the observer state. This message finds you now because you are stepping into that awakening. You are beginning to realize that your mind is not who you are. It is a tool, a narrator, an echo of everything you have learned and experienced. But you, the real you, are the one who hears the mind. You are the one who sees the thoughts. You are the one who remains when the stories quiet down. The reason this appeared in your path at this exact moment is that your consciousness has reached a threshold. For years, maybe your entire life, you may have lived inside the stream of thinking, believing that being alive meant constantly analyzing, planning, worrying, and trying to control everything. But life is not happening inside your mind. Life is happening in the awareness that notices the mind. Now that you have begun sensing this awareness, something extraordinary is unfolding. You may feel a strange distance from things that used to trigger you emotionally. Situations that once consumed all your mental energy now seem to pass through you without the same intensity. You may notice that you can pause before reacting. You may sense that your inner world feels more spacious, more quiet, even when nothing around you has changed. That spaciousness is not emptiness. It is you meeting yourself beyond the noise. This message appears in your life because you are entering a new stage of consciousness, one where you no longer live as the thinker, but as the witness. And from this point forward, your life will not unfold in the same way. The observer changes everything. To anchor this shift more deeply, go to the comments and write, "I am the observer of my life." You are not writing it for me. You are writing it as a declaration to yourself, and as a signal to your own consciousness that it has begun to fully awaken. As you begin stepping into the observer state, your inner world quietly starts to reorganize itself. It can feel both unfamiliar and completely natural at the same time. The emotions that once overwhelmed you become easier to hold. The thoughts that used to control you begin to lose their authority. The patterns that used to repeat endlessly start to unravel, as if they no longer have a place in your awareness. This happens because the observer does not resist your inner experience. It doesn't argue with it, suppress it, or deny it. It simply sees it, and in that seeing, something powerful occurs. The unconscious begins to become conscious. You start to recognize the difference between what you actually feel and the story your mind attaches to those feelings. You notice how often your mind exaggerates small discomforts into catastrophes, how it takes a moment of uncertainty and turns it into a full narrative of doom, how it distorts reality in order to keep old patterns of fear and control alive. Have you seen this in yourself recently? If you're starting to notice your mind's stories instead of automatically believing them, that's a powerful sign you're entering the observer state. If this is resonating, pause for a moment, gently like this video, and subscribe so more of these reminders can reach you right at the moments your consciousness is ready for them. From the observer, you begin witnessing all of this from a place of clarity. The mind may still talk, It may still spin stories, but its voice no longer defines you. Its fears no longer dictate your choices. Its assumptions no longer shape your identity. You begin to experience a deeper kind of freedom, one that doesn't come from changing your external circumstances, but from no longer being imprisoned by your internal reactions. Life can start to feel quieter, not because there is less happening around you, but because you are no longer entangled in every single moment. You are watching from a higher place. You are noticing the flow, rather than drowning in it. You may feel an increased sense of neutrality, not coldness, not indifference, but clarity. You respond instead of react. You feel instead of collapsing into the feeling. You observe instead of becoming entangled. This neutrality is a sign of inner mastery. It means your consciousness is no longer fused with the contents of your mind. You are reclaiming your true position as the one who sees. And this is why this message has reached you now. Only those who have begun shifting into the observer can truly feel the truth in these words. When you are fully identified with your mind, a message like this feels distant, abstract, almost impossible to grasp. But the moment you take even a single step into the awareness behind thought, these words start to feel like a description of something you already know deep within yourself, because the observer is not new, it is ancient, it is the core of who you are. You are not learning something for the first time, you are remembering. As this remembering unfolds, the world around you begins to subtly respond to your new level of consciousness. Situations feel easier to navigate. People react breathlessly to your presence. Life seems to slow down just enough for you to move with intention rather than urgency. All of this is the ripple effect of stepping into the observer. To anchor this shift more deeply, go to the comments and write, "I choose awareness over reaction." Let that be your declaration to yourself, to your mind, and to the field of consciousness you are awakening into. One of the first major transformations that happens when you step into the observer state is the unraveling of your emotional reactivity. You start noticing that emotions no longer pull you with the same force. Anger arises, but you see it forming instead of becoming it. Sadness appears, but you watch it move through you like a passing storm. Anxiety still tries to take shape, but you can sense its beginning before it consumes your entire awareness. This shift is not emotional suppression, it is emotional sovereignty. You are not pushing feelings away. You are not pretending they don't exist. You are simply watching them without losing yourself inside them. And this ability changes everything. When you were fully identified with your mind, emotions controlled you. They told you how to act, what to fear, what to avoid, what to chase. It felt like you were making choices, but most of the time, you were just reacting. The observer breaks that cycle. The observer allows emotions to exist without dominating your identity. You begin to understand that emotions are not commands, they are signals. Energetic movements rising from within you, shaped by memory, conditioning, habits, and everything you've experienced. When you watch them instead of fusing with them, they lose their power to dictate your life. This stage often feels like gaining a new kind of vision. You start seeing your internal world with a clarity you never had before. You notice the exact moment your mind tries to build a story around a feeling. You watch when fear tries to wrap itself in logic. You see how your mind attempts to amplify small discomforts into overwhelming responses. For the first time, you can separate the raw emotion from the mental narrative it usually triggers. That separation is liberation. You no longer spiral emotionally, because you stop feeding the spiral with thought. You no longer escalate small feelings into full emotional storms, because you catch the early flicker instead of reacting to the flame. If this is resonating with what you've been experiencing lately, honor that. It means something in you is waking up. Take a moment now to like this video and subscribe, so these reminders can keep meeting you at each new stage of your awakening. In this newfound clarity, something unexpected also begins to emerge: compassion. You start to feel compassion for your past self, the one who was lost inside every wave of emotion, the one who didn't know how to pause, the one who thought reactivity was the only way to survive. You recognize that every reaction, every fear, every outburst was simply a survival strategy. It was the best your consciousness knew how to do at that time. Now that you are stepping into the observer, you can hold yourself gently through these transitions instead of judging yourself for them. This message finds you because you are ready to elevate your relationship with your emotions. You are ready to stop being a prisoner of your internal weather. And remember that you are the sky that holds it. The sky is never shaken by the storms inside it, and neither is the observer. When you step into this awareness, emotional reactivity begins to dissolve, and emotional understanding takes its place. This is one of the most profound signs that awakening is truly unfolding in your life. As your identity shifts from the thinker to the observer, your relationship with your thoughts begins to transform in a profound way. Thoughts that once felt solid and unquestionable now appear as temporary formations, arising and dissolving within your awareness. You start to see how repetitive your mental patterns really are. The same fears disguised in new words. The same worries, replaying with different scenarios. The same assumptions, returning in slightly altered shapes. When you lived inside your mind, these thoughts felt like truth. They carried authority. They dictated your mood, your choices, your self-image. But once you begin observing them, they start to lose their solidity. You realize they are not facts, they are echoes of old conditioning, old memories, old survival patterns that formed when you were younger, and trying to make sense of a world that sometimes felt uncertain, unsafe, or overwhelming. As you deepen into the observer, the illusion of mental control begins to collapse. Thoughts no longer feel like commands, they feel like suggestions. They arise, they speak, they try to convince you, but now you can sense the space between you and them. That space is your freedom. In that space you begin to choose which thoughts receive your attention, and which ones dissolve without engagement. You discover that you do not have to believe everything you think. You do not have to follow every mental impulse. You begin to see that awareness, not thought, is the true source of clarity. If you're starting to notice this space between you and your thoughts, that's a powerful sign that your consciousness is waking up. Take a moment now to like this video and subscribe, so these reminders can continue supporting you as this awareness deepens. Once you experience this separation, your inner world becomes much quieter. Not empty, not numb, just uncluttered. Even when your mind is active, it no longer overwhelms you, because you are no longer merging with every thought that appears. Instead, you watch them rise and fall like waves, while knowing you are the ocean beneath them, vast, steady, untouched by the surface movement. From this vantage point, you begin to see how often your mind fabricates problems that do not actually exist. You notice how much of your suffering was born from imagined scenarios, exaggerated fears, and misinterpreted assumptions. You see how your mind has been creating tension, conflict, and anxiety, simply to maintain its own importance. But the observer does not get pulled into these mental inventions. It sees them as mental weather, not reality. And the more time you spend in this perspective, the more your mind naturally begins to calm. Not because you force it to be quiet, but because it no longer has the same power to control your state. This is why your inner world begins to feel more spacious. Thought loosens its grip. Awareness takes its rightful place. This message is appearing in your life now because you are entering, whether you realize it fully or not, a new dimension of perception. You are ready to stop living as the thinker and start living as the one who sees the thinking. The moment this awareness stabilizes, your entire life begins to operate from a higher level of consciousness. The observer is not an upgrade to your mind. It is your return to your true nature, and you are already stepping into it. To anchor this truth more deeply, go to the comments and write, "I am not my thoughts, I am the one who sees them." Let that be your declaration to yourself and to the next version of you that is now awakening. As the observer within you strengthens, something subtle but unmistakable begins to shift in how you perceive other people. You start noticing their emotional patterns, their thought loops, their unconscious reactions, with a level of clarity you may not have had before. It becomes easier to see when someone is speaking from fear rather than truth, from conditioning rather than awareness, from old wounds rather than conscious intention. You begin sensing the emotional charge behind their words, the narratives beneath their behavior, the stories they carry without even realizing it. This doesn't make you judgmental, it makes you compassionate, because what you now see so clearly in others is what you once lived unconsciously within yourself. When you step into the observer, you don't just awaken to your own inner world. You awaken to the inner worlds of those around you. You begin to understand that most people are not acting from deliberate awareness. They are reacting. They are echoing past experiences. They are replaying emotional memories. They are responding from survival patterns rather than conscious choice. And this awareness softens your heart. You stop taking things personally. Someone's anger no longer hooks you because you see the pain beneath it. Someone's impatience no longer irritates you because you sense their internal pressure. Someone's coldness no longer wounds you because you perceive their fear. If this is starting to feel familiar in your own life, notice that. That's the observer in you waking up. This shift allows you to remain centered, even when others are not. You become grounded in clarity rather than pulled into reactivity. Your presence becomes stabilizing, soothing, calm. People may even begin to feel safer around you without knowing why. They sense your stillness. They feel your neutrality. They unconsciously recognize that you're no longer participating in the chaos of emotional entanglement. And in your presence, their nervous systems begin to soften. This is the power of the observer. Your state becomes a regulating force for the environment around you. You stop matching energies and instead begin influencing them. You stop absorbing people's moods and start radiating your own clarity. You stop being shaped by external noise and begin shaping the field with your inner stillness. This transformation touches every area of your life. Conversations become smoother. Conflicts lose their intensity. Relationships become more authentic because you respond from awareness instead of reacting from old wounds. Even silence becomes more meaningful. You start recognizing the space between words, the energy beneath interactions, the truth behind the surface. And all of this happens not because you are trying to understand others, but because by observing yourself, you naturally expand your capacity to observe everything else. This message reaches you now because you are entering a stage where your inner clarity will begin transforming your outer world. As you continue stepping into the observer, your relationships will shift, your environment will change, and your presence will carry a new resonance that others can feel even before you speak. This is how consciousness moves through you. As your awareness expands, something even more profound begins to unfold. Life itself becomes easier to navigate. Not because your circumstances suddenly become perfect, but because you stop resisting the moment. Resistance was the default mode of your old self. It resisted feelings, resisted uncertainty, resisted change, resisted discomfort. It tried to control what it feared, tried to predict what it could not understand, tried to force outcomes that were misaligned. But the observer does not operate through resistance. The observer flows, it allows, it sees what is in front of it without instantly labeling it as good or bad, welcome or unwelcome. And when you stop resisting the present moment, a deep sense of freedom emerges. You begin to notice how much of your suffering was not created by life itself, but by your mind's reaction to life. You suffered not because of the feeling, but because of the story your mind told about the feeling. You suffered not because of uncertainty, but because your mind demanded certainty. You suffered not because change occurred, but because your mind clung to what felt familiar. The observer breaks this cycle by removing the story from the experience. You begin feeling emotions directly instead of through your mind's interpretation. Sadness becomes simply sadness, not a catastrophe. A moment of fear becomes simply fear, not a prediction of danger. An uncomfortable situation becomes simply discomfort, not proof that something is wrong with your life. When you experience life without the added weight of mental resistance, everything becomes lighter. Your internal world becomes more spacious. You can breathe again. And the moment your mind stops fighting reality, clarity begins to flow. You suddenly know what to do without thinking about it endlessly. You act without hesitation because your actions rise from alignment rather than fear. Your intuition becomes remarkably precise, guiding you not with drama and intensity, but with quiet certainty. This is the intelligence of awareness. It doesn't shout. It doesn't panic. It doesn't overanalyze. It moves like water, adjusting, adapting, flowing around obstacles rather than resisting them. And the more you live from this awareness, the more you notice that life meets you differently. Opportunities appear without force. Solutions arrive without strain. People respond to you in unexpected ways. Synchronicities increase as your inner state aligns with the flow of reality. This effortless way of living is not luck. It is the natural result of stepping into the observer. When you stop resisting life, Life stops resisting you, and this message finds you now because you are ready to step into this deeper flow. You are ready to loosen your mind's constant struggle and return to the natural intelligence of awareness. The observer is already awakening in you, and the next phase of your journey will unfold through this new way of being. If this resonates, take a breath right now and feel the observer within you. Then in the comments write, "I choose flow over resistance." Let that be your quiet commitment to the life you are now awakening into. Another profound shift happens when you step into the observer, something that feels like both liberation and collapse at the same time. The collapse of your old identity. You begin to realize that the person you thought you were was never fixed. It was a collection of memories, beliefs, emotional patterns, external expectations, and conditioned responses. You were living inside a narrative about who you believed you had to be. But when awareness begins witnessing your mind instead of merging with it, that narrative starts to lose its solidity. You sense that you are not the roles you play, not the personality traits you were labeled with, not the past experiences that shaped your behavior. You are something far more fluid, far more spacious. If you've been feeling like your old self doesn't quite fit anymore, that's not you losing yourself. That's the observer awakening. The liberation comes from realizing you are not trapped by your past. You can respond differently than you ever have. You can choose thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that were once impossible. You can rewrite patterns that felt lifelong. But the destabilization comes from losing that familiar sense of who you were. When the false identity dissolves, the mind panics because it no longer has a structure to cling to. It starts asking, "Who am I without this story? Who am I without these fears? Who am I without this emotional attachment? Who am I without the roles I've played for so long?" The observer does not answer these questions with a new identity. It answers with presence. It reminds you that who you are does not need a definition. You are awareness itself, the field in which every experience arises and falls. You do not need to become someone. You simply need to see clearly. Take a gentle breath right now and feel into that space. The clearer you see, the more your authentic self begins to emerge without effort. You start making choices that align with your inner truth instead of your conditioning. You start speaking in ways that feel natural instead of rehearsed. You start trusting your intuition instead of chasing external approval. The collapse of the old identity is not the loss of self. It is the reunion with your real self. The self that existed before fear shaped your behavior, before the world told you who you were supposed to be. The one beneath the layers of labels, desires, insecurities, and beliefs. Notice what stirs inside you as you hear this. That quiet recognition, "This is me," is a sign that you are standing in the doorway between the constructed self and the awakened self. This message finds you because you are undergoing this collapse. You can feel old patterns falling away. You can sense that you cannot fully return to who you once were. If this resonates, honor your journey. Like this video and subscribe so these reminders can keep meeting you as this identity dissolves and your true nature reveals itself. And your only task is to keep observing. Awareness itself will do the rest. As the observer becomes your dominant state, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Your relationship with reality itself transforms. You start noticing that life is not just happening to you, it is responding to you. When you were identified with your mind, every situation felt personal. Every setback felt like punishment. Every challenge felt like a threat. Every delay felt like failure. But from the perspective of the observer, you begin to see a deeper intelligence behind everything. Moments that once frustrated you now appear perfectly timed. Situations that once triggered you reveal themselves as invitations for growth. You realize the universe often speaks through subtle adjustments in your external world. A door closes because you are not meant to walk through it. A person drifts away because they no longer match your frequency. A delay appears because something is being rearranged in your favor. A discomfort arises because something inside you is ready to be released. The observer recognizes that reality mirrors your internal state. When your awareness is clear, life becomes clearer. When your energy is stable, your experiences become smoother. When your consciousness expands, your timeline adjusts. You begin to see that synchronicities are not coincidences. They are reflections, signs of your inner and outer worlds moving into harmony. The more you rest in awareness instead of fear or overthinking, the more this harmony increases. You may start feeling guided, not by loud messages or dramatic visions, but by subtle intuitive pulls. You sense what is right before you can explain why. You feel when something is off, even when nothing appears wrong on the surface. The observer doesn't need logic to navigate reality. It moves from an intelligence deeper than thought. As this awareness strengthens in you, life feels less chaotic. You no longer drown in the emotional turbulence of every situation. You respond with presence, and reality reorganizes itself around that presence. Even challenges feel different. You face them with clarity instead of panic, with groundedness instead of avoidance. You begin to live with the understanding that everything you encounter is part of your evolution. And in that understanding, suffering naturally decreases. Not because life becomes perfect, but because your perception is no longer trapped in the reactive mind. This message finds you because you are entering this stage now. Reality is beginning to reflect your inner awakening. As you continue stepping into the observer, the alignment between your inner and outer worlds will only grow stronger. You are not just witnessing your life. As you spend more time anchored in the observer, a radical shift begins to unfold in how you relate to discomfort. You no longer see discomfort as something to escape, suppress, or deny. You begin to recognize it as a doorway. Every uncomfortable emotion, every tension in your body, every moment of inner resistance becomes a message rather than a threat. You start to sense that discomfort is not here to punish you, but to reveal something. It shows you where you are holding on. It exposes the beliefs you've outgrown. It illuminates the stories your mind has been repeating without question. When you were identified with thought, discomfort felt overwhelming, because you were resisting it while simultaneously feeding it with mental narratives. But from the observer, discomfort becomes simpler. It is simply a sensation, a wave of energy moving through your system. And when you allow that wave to rise and fall without attaching a story to it, the discomfort begins to dissolve far more quickly than it ever did before. This ability to stay present with discomfort is one of the strongest signs of spiritual maturity. It means you are no longer controlled by your mind's avoidance strategies. You are no longer running from your own inner world. You are meeting yourself fully, and something almost miraculous happens when you do this consistently. The emotional charge of old wounds begins to weaken. Patterns that once triggered you lose their power. Memories that once felt heavy begin to lighten. Long-standing emotional habits start to unravel because you are no longer reinforcing them with unconscious reactions. The observer heals not by fixing but by seeing. Awareness itself dissolves the grip of old pain because it brings light to what was once buried in darkness. And as this inner healing unfolds, your external life begins to shift as well. You stop attracting situations that reflect unresolved wounds. You stop replaying the same emotional cycles. You stop seeking validation from the places that never truly gave it. You stop abandoning yourself in the very moments you used to shrink. This transformation is not something you force. It happens naturally as a result of witnessing your internal world with clarity instead of judgment. Every time you stay present with what arises, you reclaim a piece of yourself that was once hidden. You become whole not by changing who you are, but by allowing every part of you to be seen. And this message appears in your path now because you are ready to master this deeper level of self-observation. You are ready to see discomfort as guidance rather than punishment. You are ready to evolve from within. The observer is not just awakening in you, it is becoming your foundation. As the observer grows more stable within you, your relationship with desire also begins to transform. You start noticing that many of the things you once wanted now feel strangely distant or irrelevant. Old desires lose their pull. Old goals lose their urgency. Old fantasies lose their shine. This is not apathy. You have not stopped caring. What's falling away are the desires that were shaped by your unconscious mind, not your true self. So much of what you used to chase came from a sense of lack, a need to be validated, a longing to fit in, a hope that something external would finally fix something internal. But as you step deeper into the observer, you begin seeing through these illusions. You realize you were trying to use external outcomes to regulate internal states. You see how many of your desires were actually attempts to escape discomfort rather than move toward truth. Awareness begins to dissolve these false motivations. And as they fall away, you may pass through a phase where you feel almost desireless, a neutral, empty space where nothing feels particularly compelling. The mind panics here. It believes your motivation is dying. But in reality, what is dying is the false self, the need-driven self, the approval-seeking self, the self that believed happiness was always somewhere out there. When this layer collapses, the space it leaves behind becomes fertile ground for something new. Authentic desire. Authentic desire is different. It does not come from fear or lack. It does not try to fill a void. It arises naturally, quietly from the deeper intelligence within you. It feels peaceful instead of urgent, aligned instead of addictive, expansive rather than consuming. This shift is one of the clearest signs that you are entering a new level of consciousness. You begin wanting only what aligns with your inner truth. You move toward experiences that resonate with your deepest values. You prioritize what nourishes your awareness instead of what feeds your ego. And as your desires purify, your external life comes into greater alignment as well. You stop wasting energy on paths that are not meant for you. You stop forcing outcomes that never quite feel right. You stop chasing approval, recognition, and empty rewards. Instead, you start gravitating toward what feels intuitively right, even when you cannot yet explain why. This is how the observer guides your life. Through resonance, through clarity, through a quiet, steady knowing of what is meant for you. And this message reaches you now because you are entering this sacred purification of desire. What you want is changing because who you are is changing. You are no longer living from your mind. You are living from awareness, and that will transform everything. You are shaping it from a higher level of consciousness. As you spend more time anchored in the observer, a radical shift begins to unfold in how you relate to discomfort. You no longer see discomfort as something to escape, suppress, or deny. You begin to recognize it as a doorway. Every uncomfortable emotion, every tension in your body, every moment of inner resistance becomes a message rather than a threat. You start to sense that discomfort is not here to punish you, but to reveal something. It shows you where you are holding on. It exposes the beliefs you've outgrown. It illuminates the stories your mind has been repeating without question. When you were identified with thought, discomfort felt overwhelming, because you were resisting it while simultaneously feeding it with mental narratives. But from the observer, discomfort becomes simpler. It is simply a sensation, a wave of energy moving through your system. And when you allow that wave to rise and fall without attaching a story to it, the discomfort begins to dissolve far more quickly than it ever did before. This ability to stay present with discomfort is one of the strongest signs of spiritual maturity. It means you are no longer controlled by your mind's avoidance strategies. You are no longer running from your own inner world. You are meeting yourself fully. And something almost miraculous happens when you do this consistently. The emotional charge of old wounds begins to weaken. Patterns that once triggered you lose their power. Memories that once felt heavy begin to lighten. Long-standing emotional habits start to unravel because you are no longer reinforcing them with unconscious reactions. The observer heals not by fixing but by seeing. Awareness itself dissolves the grip of old pain because it brings light to what was once buried in darkness. And as this inner healing unfolds, your external life begins to shift as well. You stop attracting situations that reflect unresolved wounds. You stop replaying the same emotional cycles. You stop seeking validation from the places that never truly gave it. You stop abandoning yourself in the very moments you used to shrink. This transformation is not something you force. It happens naturally as a result of witnessing your internal world with clarity instead of judgment. Every time you stay present with what arises, you reclaim a piece of yourself that was once hidden. You become whole not by changing who you are, but by allowing every part of you to be seen. And this message appears in your path now because you are ready to master this deeper level of self-observation. You are ready to see discomfort as guidance rather than punishment. You are ready to evolve from within. The observer is not just awakening in you, it is becoming your foundation. As the observer grows more stable within you, your relationship with desire also begins to transform. You start noticing that many of the things you once wanted now feel strangely distant or irrelevant. Old desires lose their pull. Old goals lose their urgency. Old fantasies lose their shine. This is not apathy. You have not stopped caring. What's falling away are the desires that were shaped by your unconscious mind, not your true self. So much of what you used to chase came from a sense of lack, a need to be validated, a longing to fit in, a hope that something external would finally fix something internal. But as you step deeper into the observer, you begin seeing through these illusions. You realize you were trying to use external outcomes to regulate internal states. You see how many of your desires were actually attempts to escape discomfort, rather than move toward truth. Awareness begins to dissolve these false motivations, and as they fall away, you may pass through a phase where you feel almost desireless, a neutral, empty space where nothing feels particularly compelling. The mind panics here. It believes your motivation is dying. But in reality, what is dying is the false self, the need-driven self, the approval-seeking self, the self that believed happiness was always somewhere out there. When this layer collapses, the space it leaves behind becomes fertile ground for something new. Authentic desire. Authentic desire is different. It does not come from fear or lack. It does not try to fill a void. It arises naturally, quietly, from the deeper intelligence within you. It feels peaceful instead of urgent, aligned instead of addictive, expansive rather than consuming. This shift is one of the clearest signs that you are entering a new level of consciousness. You begin wanting only what aligns with your inner truth. You move toward experiences that resonate with your deepest values. You prioritize what nourishes your awareness instead of what feeds your ego. And as your desires purify, your external life comes into greater alignment as well. You stop wasting energy on paths that are not meant for you. You stop forcing outcomes that never quite feel right. You stop chasing approval, recognition, and empty rewards. Instead, you start gravitating toward what feels intuitively right, even when you cannot yet explain why. This is how the observer guides your life, through resonance, through clarity, through a quiet, steady knowing of what is meant for you. And this message reaches you now because you are entering this sacred purification of desire. What you want is changing because who you are is changing. You are no longer living from your mind. You are living from awareness, and that will transform everything.